All right, I'm back to answer more of your asks. Let's just hop right in. Obadala 2. So I'm getting through watching Daryl Dixon season 2 and just had the scene between Daryl and Isobel when they've been captured and are in the stalls, and she tells him she loves him. Quite ingenious to have her say it in French so the audience doesn't know whether Daryl even understood her or not. LOL. Unlike other TDers, I saw them putting him with Isobel from the start of the show, and in many ways it was a replay of Beth, i.e. just as things are starting, she dies. Poor Daryl again. But now, not knowing that she's about to die, but now knowing that she's about to die, even my husband has become a TDer, LOL. Shout out to the husband TDers out there. Because if Isobel is not his happy ending, and we know it's not Carol or Connie, since he would never have had to leave the Commonwealth to find them in the first place, then who the F is it? They could always introduce someone new, but they did that with Isobel, and then they killed her, so it would be the point of even that. Hubby is now of the opinion that if it's not Beth and she doesn't come back, then the whole thing is just stupid. So the most compelling TD evidence for him is the fact that they killed Isobel, because if indeed the theme and endpoint of the show is Daryl finding his happy ending, just what exactly else could that be at this point? Yeah. So yeah, thank you for this. I talked about this in my last video, so I wish I would have read this with the last batch, but yeah, 100%. Let's see. You made me think of something. Hang on, let me reread this a little bit. Oh, yeah. What I was going to say is that Isobel was definitely a replay of Beth. And the thing that I think is one of the really compelling, not only evidence of that, but, you know, once we've seen the whole season, or I guess the 2 first seasons, and can step back and look at it, the entire thing from beginning to end in a bird's eye view, remember that she had Beth's scars in that early episode when he was in the bath and she was, you know, taking care of him. On her wrist, she has scars that look exactly like Beth's. So my other question is, for those people who think, you know, she's not coming back and we're full of crap, why replay that? I mean, even if they were going to give him a random girlfriend in Isobel that then died, you know, and wasn't long term, why would they need to make her just like Beth? You know what I mean? Why would they need to give her the scars? Like you said, just as things get going, she dies. And I almost feel like that scene where they're in the shower stalls is, we could almost, you know, this is probably not something that I said, I don't remember for sure when it was on, but I feel like that's a parallel scene to the dinner in Alone, the candlelight dinner. And I know that it feels very different. It's not parallel in the sense that they're facing each other or that they're having dinner or that there are candles, nothing like that. But this was a scene where they were very much talking about their emotions. And I feel like her saying je t'aime, which is I love you in French. And like you said, he may or may not understand that. We don't know if he understood what that meant in French. But maybe there's a disconnect in the communication there so that he didn't quite hear that. And the reason that I think that that's a parallel to the Alone scene is, of course, this was where the idea of love came out. So Daryl staring at Beth, but she also said, oh. And Norman has talked at least 2 times that I know of very publicly in interviews that they have shown to the fandom about how in that moment Daryl thought he had misunderstood Beth's affection for him. Like he thought that she liked him, and then when she said, oh, he thought, oh, maybe I was mistaken about that. You see what I mean? So I almost feel like it's like there is feelings on the woman's side, but Daryl's not quite understanding them in both cases. Anyway, so yeah, definitely, I do think that she was a replay of Beth. And again, why would they need to do that if Beth is not coming back? There is no reason. They are not doing replays of Carol. They are not doing replays of Glenn. They are not doing replays of Merle. They are doing replays of Beth. There has to be a reason for that. Yeah, I agree with your hubby. If it's not her, then the whole thing is really stupid, but I have faith that it will be her. So yeah, I really like that. The most compelling evidence is that they killed Isobel, because if the theme and the end point of the show is Daryl finding his happy ending, just what exactly else could that be? Yeah, and I mean, I guess the only other option is that they keep going for 10 or 15 seasons, giving him a new girlfriend every 2 seasons and then killing her off. And that also would be very stupid. So I agree. Tell your husband I agree. Alrighty. Next one. This one's by you as well. So I'm in the middle of season 2 of Daryl Dixon, and it's clear that finally they are, at least for Carol, having her deal with and process her traumas that she has largely run from. I believe that in the end, this will put her back on the path to having a healthy relationship with Ezekiel. I believe that too. I'm not a huge fan of Carol character in general, but I think this is awesome and something that the TWD universe has needed for a long time, to be more focused on introspection of the characters, and it's helping me like Carol a little bit more. I believe before Beth returns, the same thing needs to happen for Daryl. We, as the audience, have never really seen his traumas, childhood abuse, and the various deaths dealt with in any kind of overt way, and I think it's necessary for his character development. It's only when he comes to a place of actually being able to talk about Beth, Merle, Glenn, etc., particularly Beth, as she seems to be the one he avoids the most, as well as explore who he had to become during all-out war and the things that he did, etc., that, like Carol, he will truly begin to move forward. He's trying to move forward now, but not having done the difficult emotional steps to get there. He's got the cart before the horse, so to speak. So I believe once that happens, he will come to a place of acceptance and stop shouldering all the blame and having this incessant need to find someone or something. It's only once he's gotten to that place that the things he wants or needs will start coming to him, i.e. Beth. So I don't know if it's going to be about him and Carol finding Beth, although I'm all for that too. I think it's more about them finding themselves, and then the things they want coming to them, or the writers can truly have an aneurysm and have it laid to Carol. Thoughts. Okay, I have a lot of thoughts on this, and this is so well articulated. So for that ending, let's just remember that they did come out last season and say that Carol was not going to be a thing. It was never going to be a thing. If they then decided to do Carol anyway, the fans are going to shoot them in their sleep. So I really don't think that that's something that they would do. But that made me laugh. So yeah, there's a few things that I feel like... yeah, I mean, I've thought of them before, but you just articulate them so well, and that we don't talk about enough. So I do agree that they've got Carol, dealing with her demons and heading back, toward being able to be in a healthy relationship with Ezekiel, because as we all know, even though the Carolers are in denial about it, Ezekiel is Carol's soulmate. It's not Daryl, okay? But it's a matter of she, especially since losing Henry, she did okay for a while. She found Henry when he was a little boy at the end of All Out War, and then she spent several happy years with Ezekiel. But after losing Henry, it's that she needs to heal from, and it's sort of brought everything back up again. So yeah, definitely. And the other thing that I wanted to say about this too, and that maybe we don't recognize enough, is that I've said before that Carol and Daryl are very, very similar. I think I have an old post from, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, that says they have the exact same arc, and they actually do. And that is exactly why they would not make good romantic partners. So we always have this balance in the mainstream characters in their romantic relationships, where there's one character that's a little bit more pessimistic and self-destructive, and then there's one, their partner is more optimistic and just more healthy emotionally, right? So obviously it's Beth that's the more optimistic one, and Daryl just tends toward destructive tendencies when he is in deep grief, and she brought him out of that. The same thing with Carol and Ezekiel. Ezekiel is obviously the more happy and optimistic one, and Carol is the more dour one, and it's nothing right or wrong, good or bad about any of those. It's why they chose the soulmates that they did for them, because they complement them and help them to be more just balanced, right? And so this is a little bit of a morbid joke, but I've made it before that if Daryl and Carol did get into a romantic relationship and then something went wrong, like they lost a lot of people or something, they wouldn't have the positivity to balance themselves out. And I feel like it would end in a murder-suicide pact or something like that. And I don't mean that literally, but you know what I mean? It would not be a good energy, because they both come from an abusive background. They've been through a lot of the same things and a lot of different things, but they have a lot of the same pain, and that's why they first connected, because they both have been through the abuse, and that's very common for abuse victims to connect over that, but it doesn't make them very good romantic partners, at least not in this case. So anyway, all of that, sorry, bit of a tangent, but just to say that maybe it's very fitting for Carol to be here too, because they both have traumas to work through, and they both need to figure this out if they want to find their happy endings. Now, the reason I think that Judith talked about the happy ending to Daryl and not to Carol is because Carol really did already find hers in Ezekiel. It's just a matter of working through her demons to get back to him. But she knows where he is. She's not searching for him. He's there waiting for her, and he's made it very clear that he'll wait for her forever, even if it takes 10 years or something. If she comes back and wants to be with him, he'll be with her, because he loves her. So she has her happy ending. It's just a matter of figuring out her own crap so that she can work through it and be in that relationship again. But Daryl has not found his happy ending yet. Okay, the next thing is, you talk about how he needs to do this in order for, I've actually said this for a long time, like since, I think I've been saying this since season 6, when it's just something that occurred to me when we were watching Operation Lead the Walkers Away, and Daryl looks so miserable on his bicycle. And I just felt like he needed to work through that before Beth could return to him. And it's almost like saying, he needs to work through this and get himself to a healthier place to be worthy of Beth. And I almost hate to say it that way because it sounds like I'm hating on Daryl and he's not worthy of her or something, but that's not what I mean. It just, in order for him to be able to sustain a healthy relationship, he needs to work through his trauma. So yeah, I've said this for a long time, and we've kind of seen it. There were times when we've seen him be healthier and work through things, and then it seems like it always, he kind of backpedals. And so I don't think he's worked through it entirely. Here and there, but I also think a really big hint, I maintain this, even though I know not everybody agrees with me, but there's an episode, I want to say it's in season 9, but it might be season 10. It's the one called The Storm, where they have the snow. And at the end, Lydia is looking up at the paintings above Maggie's desk. One of them's Herschel, one of them's Glenn, we know one of them's Beth. The other one is probably her stepmom or her mom. And he tells Lydia he'll tell her about these people someday, and at first he's kind of smiling, and that makes it seem like, okay, he's smiling, so he's, gotten to a point where he can remember these people nostalgically, but then his eyes kind of shift a little bit to the left, I think, and he stops smiling. And I will go to my grave saying he was looking at Beth's picture, and it's the reason he stopped smiling is because it's a symbol that he is not over that yet. I mean, maybe he's forgiven himself for Glenn. Maybe he can remember Herschel fondly, because he's over the grief of losing Herschel, but he has not worked through the Beth issue yet. So it's not that he wasn't happy to see her picture, but as soon as he looked at her, like all of the emotion came up again and he stopped smiling. So anyway, yeah, I totally agree that he's got to work through these things and figure them out. And then only after that, in whatever way, will he be able to connect with Beth. And I actually think that we have a lot of suggestion in this new Daryl Dixon trailer that this is what's going to be happening. We have him talking about his age. We have him and Carol possibly talking about what happened at the end of season 2. We have him wandering in the desert, which is also a very, very biblical symbol of him wandering in the desert, right, before he hits the promised land. And very often Bethel, Beth, Bethlehem, all of those are associated with the promised land, meaning house of bread, and her name is built into it, right? Anyway, so I think we have a lot of evidence that maybe he will be finally talking about some of these things and working through these things. We always say that we want him to talk about Beth. We want him to say her name. And, obviously he doesn't in the trailer, so I don't know if he will in the season, but he's talking about things, right? He's talking about the past and how young he was, and him and Carol are talking about what happened, assuming that they're talking about what happened at the end of season 2. I could be wrong about that, but in general, in the show, they don't usually do this. They don't usually say, this is what I was feeling when this traumatic thing happened, and we are seeing them do that in the preview. So that's promising, right? Let's see, anything else I need to address here? Sorry, just rereading the last couple of paragraphs again. So yeah, I agree. I think ever since season 5, it was always going to be about him and Carol finding Beth together. And if you think about that, if you think about the template from season 5, it still all fits. It really does, because in season 5, he jumped in the car and went running after it because he saw the white cross and knew that they were the people who kidnapped Beth. She went with him because she was there, Carol did. But the reason she was even out there is because she was running away from her problems, right? And in season 2, when she and Daryl came back together, he did get after her for that and be like, you were just running away. You were just using this as an excuse, to come find me, but you're still running away from your problems. You know what I mean? So the template is still there, which is why I always say this is why they had to push it off for a season when Melissa couldn't do season 1, because she is really integral to the arc. She is supposed to be with him throughout this. They are supposed to go through this together. They are supposed to be together when they figure out where Beth is, just like they did in season 5, and it's all still there. So in the last video I talked about, the reasons why I hold out hope for the time being, even though it's been a long time. And I was talking about that he gets his happy ending and all of the symbolism and everything. But there's also this. I didn't talk about this. The season 5 template. It's still there, okay? We have seen them together, him and Carol, and I just think it was always planned this way. So until we get to a point, I guess you could also say, even aside from the happy ending thing, if we get to a point where him and Carol go their separate ways and don't find Beth, then okay, then maybe we can say at that point that this isn't the season 5 template. But for right now, it most definitely is. It's following that same pattern. So yeah, thank you so much for this rundown. It was really great, and I completely agree. Completely agree. Next one. Why doesn't Daryl ever say Beth's name after her death? I think it's really weird. We've seen him mention Glenn, Merle, Rick, but Beth. Nope, absolutely nothing. Since his breakdown in the woods and the music box, we see him obviously affected by it for a really long time, but he never fully recovered and regained his usual spunk, newfound self-confidence. I rewatched the TWD and Daryl Dixon show after Coda. He doesn't say her name once. Beth's name has literally been written into the scripts and then cut. It's super weird, just saying. Personally, I theorize it has something to do with the cut footage from season 5 that we haven't seen yet. After her death, it definitely broke something in Daryl, and after her body went missing, it just finished the job. Another unexplained change that followed was how he treated the rest of Team Family after her death. He almost seemed mad, like he held resentment for them, but it's not explained as to why. Just maybe it's because they decided to leave her body and then not being able to find it when they returned, thus leading him to not be able to have closure. This could be why we don't see Maggie or Daryl with the main group. When they go to Noah's house, they are busy looking for Beth's corpse. But I'd like to hear your thoughts. Maybe I'm missing something. Also, I love your videos so much. Thank you. Okay, yeah, a couple of things here to go over. Him not saying her name. We always talk about how he doesn't say her name, and it's mostly because, we come up with why the writers don't want to say her name. And I'm sure that I think that's valid. It's just that they don't want to remind the audience. They don't want to hint at it, that sort of thing. And by trying so hard not to hint at it, sometimes they hint at it, right? Like in 905, which was when Rick was taken by the black helicopter and everything, we had a voiceover of Beth saying, "What's your wound?" And all the other characters, it had their names. Like with Abraham's, it said, "What's your wound?" And the subtitle said Abraham. But with Beth's, it said woman. Like they were trying so hard not to say her name that it actually makes her stand out amongst the others. So that doesn't always work for them, or at least not, granted, most of the fandom isn't noticing that, just we are. But the other thing I was thinking about is that this also may be very much just a Daryl thing, because I was thinking about when Beth asks him about Merle in Still, and make sure I'm getting the right episode name in there, and she says, "You miss him, don't you?" And he drops his head and looks away, and he does mention Merle to her. He does mention Merle's name after that when he's talking about the story about the talking dog, right? But other than that, and just because they were kind of talking about him anyway, he doesn't talk about Merle. He really doesn't. And I think it's a thing where he doesn't bring up their names because it's too painful. And then we saw Carol do this too. And I don't think it's everybody in the show, but again, Daryl and Carol are very, very similar. In 4A, it's when, I don't remember which episode it is. It's either, there's like 3 episodes that begin with an I, Infected and Indifference and another one. Anyway, one of those. It's when Carol and Rick go to the Apple house and are collecting supplies and everything, and he asks her, "Why don't you ever say her name?" And then because he's asking her, she goes, "Oh, Sophia? Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Whatever. I don't see her anymore. Why do I need to say her name?" But it's the same thing. I think the idea is that it's so painful that they can't say the name. So if he is mentioning someone else, then it shows that he's moved past that, at least to the point where he's forgiven himself and can be in a good place and move on. And if he's not saying the name, it's because he hasn't moved past it yet. So we did see Maggie say Beth's name in Home Sweet Home, that episode, but Daryl didn't say it, and they very specifically did not show his face. It was like the camera was on Maggie's face as she was talking, and we could just see the back of his head. I think that was really purposeful. They did not want us to see his expression when she mentioned Beth's name. So yeah, definitely very interesting, and I think it has to do with that. Hopefully it would be really nice if once she does come back, if Gimple or Kang or somebody would come out and answer these questions for us and be like, okay, so just what was the logic behind not saying her name? Give us some idea. And, maybe we're overthinking it a little. Maybe they just aren't saying it because they're trying not to hint that she's going to come back. I mean, if it was such a huge trauma for him, and I do believe it was, and that's what they're going for, then what his expression is and how he reacts to it would be very, very telling to the audience that there's still something there. And they're just trying to avoid that because they don't want people to know where they're going with it, right? Yeah, so that's my theory on that. It could have something to do with the missing footage from season 5. I agree with that too. I've talked about him being angry, especially with Rick in the latter half of season 5. I do think it's because Rick made him stop looking for Beth. I do think that's why. He's also really mad. I don't know if he's mad at Sasha, but I think he's mad in general and at the group. And we do believe that Sasha had some major role in what happened during those missing 17 days, but we don't know what it is. And there's been all kinds of theories about what she may or may not have done or not done, or, whatever the case may be. We just don't know. Until we see it, we don't know. They haven't given us enough. But the reason I mentioned Sasha is because if you watch 509, when they're burying Tyrese at the end, they do the thing where they pick up a shovel full of dirt and pour it into the grave, which is supposed to symbolize letting that person go. And Daryl does it. He picks up the shovel and the dirt and puts it in there, and then he hands the shovel to Sasha, but when he does, he turns his back on her and holds it out behind him. And that's a big gesture at a funeral, at somebody's brother's funeral. You know what I mean? It's almost insane that he does that. And it's very unlike him. He's usually a very compassionate person, but I think this has to do with the fact that he was not able to find and bury Beth. And now, of course she's sad. She just lost her brother. It's not like this is a great occasion or anything, but at least she's able to bury him. And Daryl wasn't able to do that. And it seems to me like he's really mad at Sasha in that moment. So I felt like the objects of his anger were Sasha and Rick specifically. And he was kind of mad at the whole group in general in a lot of ways. He was just angry and being surly when they got to Alexandria. But it seemed like those two were kind of the focuses of it. So, I think that's why, and I think it has everything to do with those missing 17 days. But exactly what happened and why he was angry and all of that, we don't know that yet. And it will be really interesting to finally find it out. And there's a lot of people, I don't know, I'm on the fence about them looking for Beth's corpse, and that's why they weren't there. I think 50-50. I think they could be. You could be right about that, and a lot of people have said that. But at the same time, the only reason I am a little bit unsure about that is because it would mean that the group broke into 2 sections and were 500 miles apart, and I just don't really see them doing that. When Rick radios Carol, it doesn't seem like they're very far away. Some of them went, but it seems to me like those walkie-talkies wouldn't have a range of 500 miles. It's probably they're just 5 miles away or something. And so with that being the case, I don't know why everybody didn't come, and maybe there's some other reason that has to do with those missing 15 days and we just don't have any clue what it is. Or maybe it's just that everybody was exhausted and they decided to send a small group and let everyone else rest, and Daryl was being too surly at the time and just didn't want to go. I don't know. But at the same time, you could be right. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, so I hope that answers all of your questions. Thanks for sending that in. All right, guys, I'm going to call it there, and I'll be back in a few days with some more asks.